Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. This is our NFL wrap-up show. Joey Clinkscales, Brian LeBel, myself, I'm Harper LeBel. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Before we get going and get over all the different scores, highlights, and everything that's going to take place here from the week previous, I do want to make mention of one quick thing. We're going a little bit earlier. It's just after halftime. It's in the third quarter of the Denver-Cincinnati second Monday night game. We're going to get a little bit of an early start here. By normal standards, we would wait till after that game is over, but the first Monday night game is over, so we want to begin with that. And for those of you that pay attention, we just love to make sure that on a single game Monday night game, we'll wait till that's over, and then we will officially wrap it up. But this week, a little bit early. I'd also like to say, hey, for those of you that are interested in the bodybuilding aspect of the competitive sports world, the Lee Haney Games will be taking place on November 1st. That's a Saturday evening. And I'm going to tell you right now, Lee Haney's been a friend. He's an 8-time Mr. Olympia champion, friend of the show. And this is going to be a pre-qualifier for the 2026 Mr. Olympia competition. So there'll be a man and a woman that qualify that will be able to go to the Mr. Olympia because of this. And there's other ways if you want to compete and you're not a bodybuilder, but you're just a strong dude. There's a deadlift competition. There is a calisthenics competition. There's a cornhole competition. There's a kids fit portion of it. There's even a golf tournament if you're interested. Go to LeeHaneyGames.com for all the details. It's at the Gas Salt District here in Duluth, Georgia. You'll be glad you did. You're supporting some great athletes, and you're also, even if you don't participate, it's a tremendous cause. The proceeds go to the Haney Health Center, and there are all kinds of different ways that he's helping out kids. Thank you very much for being a part of that. All right, week 4, with the exception of the Broncos-Bengals, it's 21-3 in the middle of the third quarter. Joey, I'd like to begin by asking you a simple little question. As a former player, as a former scout, former general manager, you understand the different nuances. The only thing you haven't done has been a head coach, but everything else has been a part of what your understanding is. Back in the day, they used to break down a 16-game schedule in a 4-game quadrant. Each 4 of the parts, like a quarter of a basketball game, consisted of 4 games. And your goal would be to go 3-1, 3-1, 3-1, 3-1. You'd go 12-4. You'd probably win your division. You're going to get a bye week. And that's a goal that you set for yourself. If you go 0-4 in the first, you got a lot of things to straighten out. But 3-1, 3-1 all throughout, is that still a process that's a part of the way that the game is even though there's 17 weeks now? Tell me a little bit more about how that has changed, or if it's still on spot with the way you want to gauge your system and where you are.
Right. It's pretty much the same. Most teams will self-scout during the bye week, obviously, try to see what they need to do to get better and what have you. But most teams will take those 3-1 opportunities to figure out, to say, hey, we're pretty good here. We need to win this quarter. They divide it in the quadrants, actually. So, the first 4 games, the second 4 games, the third 4 games, the last 5 games. But if you can go 3-1, then you usually going to win your division, most likely, and usually have a bye.
And in many respects, you can control your own destiny, right? You got to wait for somebody. Somebody's either got to catch you or pass you, but you're in the driver's seat in most cases.
Without question. I think that you get a pretty good gauge of your team through those quadrants. So after 4 games, you kind of get a feel for what type team you have, where you're strong, where you're weak, the things you need to improve on. And after that second quadrant, then you figure out, hey, we really need to start looking in the draft for this position. Usually that second quadrant happens before the trade deadline. So if you need to use a draft pick or other assets to get new players in. But that's always difficult in the NFL, because it's not like basketball where you can grab somebody and put them right into play, especially if it's at a skill position. That's really hard for a guy to come in and learn a new system and play, unless he's a offensive or defensive lineman.
Yeah, and Joe, you bring up a very interesting point there. In a lot of cases, you're almost better off getting a guy that you may have let go in training camp and bringing him on the developmental if it gets to the point with whether it be an injury or just a fatigue that that may kick in at the end of the year. At least get an idea what a guy can do on the practice squad, right? Because getting a guy that's just spent the last 9 weeks learning the verbiage of an offense that is completely different than what you're running, that can almost be a detriment.
Well, the practice squad today in today's NFL is 16 players. So now you have an opportunity to have guys that you've already had for 4 weeks or 8 weeks and try to get on the field and develop.
Brian, when you look at a 4-quadrant season breakdown and then you throw the bye week in, and as Joey said, maybe a trade deadline or injuries and all this kind of stuff, it's a pretty basic way to kind of gauge where you are aside from the actual record that you have. But as Bill Parcells said years ago, he goes, you are what your record says you are. But knowing what you're doing and then lining yourself up with everyone else that's not only in your division but in the conference and setting yourself up to be in the right place once playoffs start.
Yeah, I think you might have some issues because we have a lot more overseas games now. Some of those travel weeks might get messed up, but it's essentially that, right? It's just give ourselves a quarterly report, try to scout ourselves the best we can. Obviously, that bye week, I mean, good teams, the Belichick coach teams, the Andy Reid teams, those teams, usually it's a guaranteed win after a bye, right? When you get an extra week to prepare, the really good teams and the well-coached teams, it's usually an extra win. And it's almost like, a second season opener where you get all this extra time and you're going to break down this film. We're going to know the other team better than we know ourselves. But so it's a little bit of self-scout, a little bit of getting ahead on your next opponent. But yeah, absolutely. I agree with Joey 100%.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's take a look at what took place here in the NFL this past week. We're going to begin with the game that just ended a few moments ago. 0-3 New York Jets go against 0-3 Miami Dolphins. Someone's going to have to win this game as opposed to, who's going to lose. The Dolphins end up holding on 27-21 is the final. Joey, we'll start with you. Is this a breath of fresh air for the Dolphins? Is this a real problem now for the Jets? Is it a little bit of both? Tell me what you gleaned from a winless team going against another winless team this late in the first part of the season.
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. Starting with the Jets, I think they are in a position where they really don't have a consistent offense. When Justin Fields can really stand in the pocket and throw the ball, he does some good things. And again, they really need to find a way to get Garrett the ball a lot more. He made an incredible catch for a touchdown tonight. They really need to find a way to do that and find a consistent run game. They have a couple really big backs who can do some things. So that tells me their offensive line is not where they want it to be because they can't win the line of scrimmage offensively or defensively. And defensively is where they were supposed to be able to hang their hat. But they've struggled the last couple games on defense. So it doesn't look real promising for the future, the short-term future of the Jets. Miami, they won a big game, which they needed to win. They need to get off the snide. But they lost one of their key players tonight, probably for the season. That injury did not look good. He's already at the hospital, which is telling you that something is really problematic.
It's serious. It's serious.
So, it's very serious. But Miami has issues as well. They have not played with any real continuity all season. Again, Tua can be inconsistent. HN ran the ball. He did a couple things tonight. But I have no real confidence that Miami can sustain this. Although they played really well versus Buffalo and they come back and get a win tonight. That division would be interesting. Buffalo's at the top of it, and I think they're going to stay there and not really going to be challenged in the division much all year.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a minute. Very interesting point there. Tyreek Hill, Brian, isn't he at the end of his contract? I mean, this couldn't come at a worse time for a guy that basically has said he doesn't even want to be in Miami after the season's over. For him to have a season-ending injury and a guy that's so dependent on his speed, for this to be a leg injury, that could be devastating.
Yeah, the extent is unknown. They said dislocated knee is the diagnosis initially. That's it. Best case scenario, it's probably a 6 to 9 month injury. Worst case scenario, it could be a year and a half. So it's very tough. You don't know the damage. It looked bad. It looked really ugly. It's one of those things where you don't watch it again. But I mean, if you're the Dolphins, though, I mean, he had 6 catches for just shy of 70 yards before he goes out. He was kind of the main focus on the offense, and what he's able to do is he creates separation. Darren Waller had 2 touchdown catches tonight in his first game with them, and a lot of that's because the focus on the red zone's on Tyreek. Jalen Waddle was able to kind of get going a little bit. Yep. The run game looked good. My takeaway from this game is a very sloppy game. I think there were 19 penalties in this game. I think the Jets had over 100 yards in penalties, and it's really hard to win a game in the National Football League if you're going to have that many penalties, right? It's just it's tough to do, even against a team like the Dolphins that aren't very good. Justin Fields, I'm still kind of high on him. I feel like the offensive line kind of failed him. He seems like he's running for his life back there, and it stifles the run game, like Joey mentioned with Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. He got a little banged up tonight too, but turnovers and penalties, it'll crush you. It just, especially an offense that isn't really explosive or high powered like the Jets, they kind of have to, get their chunk plays, get their 4 or 5 yards here and there and keep it going and play for third and short. I think that's where they can live and die, especially if you have a quarterback like Fields who can play action, scramble, keep plays alive. But an ugly game, a sloppy game, some injuries. You hope Tyreek Hill's okay. But, if you're the Jets, it's tough. You're the Dolphins, you get out of there with a win. So,
Joey, Brian mentioned the penalties and all that. I know an average fan is going to say, that's a coaching problem and coaches need to be fired. Isn't there a point where you go, that has nothing to do with the coaches. That has everything to do with these guys not concentrating or really focusing the way that they should. I'm not going to put any blame on anything, but there's other problems when you have that many penalties here 4 weeks into the season.
Absolutely. The players have to take responsibility for penalties, especially penalties like offsides, illegal motion, holding. Those aren't coaching issues. Those are player issues for sure.
Yeah, and then just the blatant illegal procedure or something like that. It is correctable, and there's an attitude that certain quarterbacks won't allow that and let you stay on the field. We know who we're talking about. There's some guys that are out there.
Jets had a penalty. It was 1st and 10. Take a shot to the end zone. Garrett Wilson comes down with it. It's a great throw, great catch, and it's a holding penalty. Comes back. They end up having to settle for 3. Leaving points on the board.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a problem all around, but you try to work. Anyway, so the final here, Dolphins 27-21. They beat the Jets. Jets are 0-4 right now. Dolphins fall. They win the game, but they're still 1-3. Next game, they're in just about 2 minutes left to go in the third quarter. The Broncos 21-3. Bengals are in a little bit of trouble. We'll talk about this maybe at the end of the show, but just want to get everybody up to date. These are the 2 Monday night games. Let's go back to Thursday, if you guys don't mind. This is an interesting game to me. The Seahawks were 2-1, and so are the Cardinals. Home game. I think Sam Darnold is kind of making a little name for himself. I don't think he has a chip on his shoulder, but give me a chance to play, and I'll show you what I can do. 242 yards, a touchdown. 18 completions isn't all that great, but the guys around him are starting to play better, and they're 3-1 right now. Joey, give me your thoughts here on the Seahawks.
When Sam has a clean pocket, he is really an efficient player. He can get things done. He's accurate with the ball when he's got a clean pocket, and he's a sneaky, good athlete. So when things break down, he's big enough and strong enough to get outside the pocket and run, but he would prefer to stay in the pocket, especially when it's clean. And hey, he made some plays to Smith and Jigma and a couple other guys. So, Seattle has a really good defense. That I think that's the part that's being overlooked. The head coach has a defensive pedigree. So they really do some things good. So they're going to be in the hunt for that in that division all year.
Before I go to Brian, I got to follow up. You said, doing your due diligence, like we mentioned a little bit earlier. Mm-hmm. Give me some due diligence about Sam Darnold when he doesn't have a clean pocket. What's the scouting report for everybody else in the league? Is he just as bad as anybody else would be? Or, you mentioned how good he can be when the pocket is clean. What is one of his kryptonites, weakness that he might have?
Well, the thing with most quarterbacks, not only Sam, but most quarterbacks, if you get pressure inside, okay, not necessarily on the edge because, that's problematic as well. But when you get pressure in his face where he can't step up in the pocket, then things tend to happen really quickly for Sam. And he has the potential to throw interceptions, just like last year in the playoffs.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Brian, his what were they, 14-3 or 15-2 Minnesota Vikings to get in the playoffs. The crowd is screaming Skol, and they're having a great time and whatever. Next thing you know, Sam's got some pressure. Balls are falling incomplete, and the Vikings end up fading. I was impressed by they're 3-1 right now. The Rams and the 49ers are 3-1 as well. And the worst team in that division right now is Arizona at 2-2. That's not a bad place to be. They're only a game out, the Cardinals. They lose at home by 3. Give me your assessment of this game.
I really do have some concerns with the Cardinals. Offensive line, I don't think is great. They do a good job. Kyler Murray is running for his life a lot, and they lost again. They lost their best running back a week ago, so they have a couple problems there. Defensively, I would like to see those guys be able to rush the passer, affect the passer a lot more. But Kyler, my question would be initially, has he reached a plateau in Arizona? And what I mean by that, I don't think he's reached a plateau as a player, but in that system, on that team, has he gone as far as he could go with the talent around him? You know, I really think he has a lot of ability. You know, he's small. You saw a lot of batted balls the other night, which would be problematic for a guy his size.
Right.
However, he is a good player. He's effective, especially when he's scrambling, when he can make plays with his legs. But the talent around, especially at the receiver position, you know, their top receiver, he's not the most explosive guy. He's got really good hands when he concentrates, but, you know, his confidence wanes, goes up and down quite a bit. Harrison is who I'm talking about. And
sure.
I just don't know if they have what it takes to really be competitive, be a playoff caliber team. Now, they have a really good tight end. So he depends on that tight end a lot, which most young quarterbacks do. Because that's their security blanket. But I'm just not sure how far Arizona can go.
And their tight end is a Colorado State grad. Thank you very much. Got to say go Rams. Brian, one of the things about what Joey said that I had to look this up, their defense, they've only given up 74 points in their first 4 games, which is one of the lowest. It's the lowest in the division. And who is the one team I just saw them? 67 points is all that Seattle has given up. So both of those defenses have been really stingy. Give me your thoughts here. First, we'll talk about Arizona, and then give me your perspective on Seattle with a 3-1 record right now.
Well, I think Joey pointed it out when he talked about, you know, losing James Conner. They lost their 3 down back. You know, he's a guy he's a veteran. You know, he understands the offense better than probably anybody else in that backfield. He's been kind of I don't want to say a crutch, but his ability to break tackles, even back, you know, in his Pittsburgh days, he's been phenomenal at breaking tackles, making something out of nothing. He's also been a tremendous red zone guy who can go in. You know, his job is to score touchdowns. And they kind of struggle a little bit in the red zone. And I don't know if I like Trey Benson, kid out of Florida State. He's very, very talented, but I don't think he's necessarily on that same level, and they can't do the same things. A lot of teams are going with the 1-2 punch, right? You got to have a combination of running backs who can do both, try to keep guys fresh, try to complement one another, right? That's where the complementary backs, but they kind of got to find their identity. I know it's week 1, right? It's week 1 since Connor got hurt, but you know, Marvin Harrison as well, like Joey said, his confidence has kind of been waning a little bit. He had a couple drops. You feel good for him because he caught that touchdown pass in traffic, you know, and he kind of put Arizona back in the game. But you know, I think they need to find some consistency, and I think they need to find that go-to guy on third down, right? I think it could be Trey McBride. I think it should be Trey McBride, probably in the red zone as well as third down, but just some consistency. You know, Kyler had a couple of bad interceptions, but you know, I think realistically they haven't played their best football. They're still 2-2. You know, it's tough losing a division game. Thursday night games are usually ugly games, though, especially because they're always division games. But I'm not going to write Arizona off yet. I think, unfortunately, as of right now, they're the worst team in that division. But I think the 3 teams above them are very, very good. Yeah,
Seattle 3-1. Cardinals fall to 2-2 at home. They only had 6 points at the end of the third quarter. They get 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns, but it wasn't enough. They end up still losing by 3. 23-20 is the final in that one. And Sunday's games, let's start here in Atlanta. Falcons couldn't have played any worse last week against Carolina. They come out, they get a touchdown in the opening drive, and everything looks really good. Michael Penix has a 300-yard game, 184 yards total for Bijan. Who would have thought that they had played so poorly Joey, they kind of bounced back a little bit, knowing full well that Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin and one of the running backs, the shorthanded Commanders come into Atlanta, and the Falcons are able to get their business done.
Right. Washington, as you said, had a lot of injuries to key players, which I think played a factor. And Mariota had a efficient, although not spectacular game.
Was it an average day? I mean, for a quarterback, 55 yards, something like that, 2 touchdowns and a pick?
Yes.
Is that an average day, I guess?
You know,
and you
in
needed a little above that.
In today's football, it's really average to below average. But,
okay,
if you can run the ball, that helps.
Yeah.
The thing, the Falcons are schizophrenic. Let's be honest. The Falcons are schizophrenic. They'll play good against fairly decent teams, and they'll lay an egg the next week. So they really haven't found any continuity. Penix played really well, given the circumstances, and he found Drake London. He found the tight end. So they did some really good things to show you what they could do, and obviously the running back Bijan Robinson played really well. He had almost as many yards receiving the ball as he had rushing. I think he had like 75 yards rushing and over 100 yards receiving. So he's their Swiss Army knife.
Brian, what if I told you at week 4, it would take the end of the first quarter for Michael Penix to get his first throwing touchdown on the year? Would that have been a surprise?
A little bit. I think if you said they were 2-2 at that point, yeah. I think Joey kind of summed it up, the schizophrenic part. I was going to go Jekyll and Hyde, right? This is a team like you have a Carolina team they're not any lower than they could possibly be, right? They can't score any points. They can't stop anybody on defense. They don't have any running game, and you lose 30-0. And then you come out next week against a Washington team who's well coached. You got a coach who was formerly your guy, who's got something to play for, got a little chip on his shoulder. Marcus Mariota, who played for you, who's got a chip on his shoulder, and you come out and you take care of business. And then you beat a very good Minnesota Viking team at their place in primetime. I don't know what to make of this team. It being 2-2, at this point, I think any fan would have said, "Hey, flip the games." Right? We beat Carolina and we win week 1, and we probably lose to Minnesota and Washington. But it's not a bad place to be. They're going to their bye this week as well, if I'm not mistaken. But is there a better running back in the league right now than Bijan Robinson? I mean, is there anybody doing more for their team week in and week out than this guy? Because, I mean, they rely on him heavily, and he just – whatever he's asked to do in that offense, he's just spectacular. I don't think he was the leading receiver, but I think he was only a couple yards behind Drake London, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And, to have 75 yards, that's an efficient day, right? Especially when he's splitting carries almost 50-50 with Tyler Algier. I mean, the offensive line looked good. They said, "Hey, Zach Robinson, listen, if you want to keep coaching here in Atlanta, you're going to have to come down on the sidelines." He did. It looked good. But, if you're Washington too, they played them tough, right? It wasn't necessarily competitive, but they were hanging around the whole game, right? They got that late touchdown to make it close. But with your starting quarterback out, your running back 1, who was going to be your workhorse, Austin Eckler, being gone for the season, Terry McLaurin, he's not healthy. Deebo Samuel looked good. The rest of the running backs looked pretty good. Tight end room looked pretty good. So I think if you're Washington, you're kind of, hey, we're still figuring out. We got to get healthy. We'll be back. But if you're the Falcons, I think I think it's a little too early to say a must win, but I felt kind of like this was a must win.
Yeah. Well, to rise up to 2-2 versus being 1-3 at this point, and literally being, with Carolina and New Orleans in terms of, your standings, to be a game out after a tough loss, and we'll talk about this in a minute, up in or down in Tampa against the Eagles. Interesting perspective, and we'll look at that and some other things in the standings. But Falcons end up holding on at home. 34-27 is the final there. Next game I want to look at, this is the overseas game in Dublin. Every once in a while, Aaron Rodgers, is that schizophrenia, Joey, where sometimes he looks like he's pretty stinking good, and he's 10 years younger, and he's doing the fist pump, and he's excited. I think a new surrounding in Pittsburgh, especially the way they play defense, I think that has him jacked. I think he's really excited to be there.
Well, I think it's a little bit of age, and I think he is very much dependent on the offensive line. And the weeks the offensive line plays well, then he performs well. I mean, he was able to get the ball to the big receiver early and made a big play. The run game perked up a little bit, and obviously defensively they played pretty well for the most part. And again, Carson Wentz kind of came back down to who we thought Carson Wentz might be. He threw the ball 46 times, and if you can make a team one-dimensional, if a quarterback throws 46 times, they're usually behind and they're usually going to lose the game. So Pittsburgh did what they were supposed to do defensively, which in turn helped the offense tremendously.
Yeah, you lose so much time with going overseas and having to practice in a different country. The food, the water, everything is different. You got to get acclimated. You're on a different time schedule, meaning that you're used to being up at let's say 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. Well, that's 3 in the morning when you're in Dublin. Long story short is the Steelers score a touchdown in each of the first 3 quarters, Brian, and they develop a lead where, as Joey said, Carson Wentz throws for 350 yards. He has 2 touchdowns, but that's because that was the only way they were going to get back in the ball game.
He was also sacked 6 times. So, dropping back to throw that much is kind of detrimental to what the Vikings are trying to do. The tape the week before was perfect. Everything they did against Cincinnati seemed to work. I don't even know if they punted for the majority of that game, but the run game wasn't necessarily as efficient as I think it needed to be. Jordan Addison coming back was big for them. He had a solid game, and I think he's one of the best complementary receivers in the league, being next to Justin Jefferson, who a lot of targets, a lot of yards for him as well. He was very involved, but it's one of those things that might have just been too little, too late. Where you kind of get the Steelers to say, "Hey, listen, we can pin our ears back, we can get after them, we can kind of just keep everything in front of us because they're playing from ahead, right?" And I think that's kind of where Pittsburgh needs to be because. Listen, you got an old quarterback who doesn't really want to move around a lot. You got an offensive line that's sometimes pretty good, most of the time not. When you can run the ball like they did, I think they had they had like over 130 rushing yards as a team, and they had a couple of touchdowns on the ground. That's massive. That's it's huge for them. DK Metcalf had another good game. He and Aaron Rodgers have a really good rapport, especially in the red zone.
131 yards, Brian. You're right. That's exactly what they had on the ground.
So I think that's kind of what Minnesota was trying to do, right? It's not necessarily the same boat, but we have a quarterback that we maybe don't trust as much, and we want to run the ball and take the pressure off of him. Steelers defense is good. They're very opportunistic now. They're saying, hey, we kind of bend and not break, and they're getting a ton of turnovers, especially in the red area, getting after the quarterback.
Yep.
A lot of Steelers fans are asking after week 1, kind of the first half of week 2, we're like, hey, we paid TJ, we paid all these guys in the front. Where's this pressure coming from? They said, hey, Don, we got it figured out. Don't worry about it. But Steelers are looking like a good football team. They're looking like potentially with the way the Ravens are playing and Cincinnati and that division right now, this could be a team that could very sneakily host a playoff game in January.
Yeah, they're 3-1 right now. Bengals, if they lose tonight, will be 2-2, so there'll be a 1-game advantage. And then we'll talk about the Ravens and the Browns. But 3-1 versus 2-2 with the Vikings. Next game that we're going to look at, for obvious reasons, we're talking about 2 teams going in opposite direction. The Bills at home, they were 2-0 going into this game, and then the Saints 0-2 on the road. They're 0-2 now. Brian, I'm going to start with you because I mentioned this to you a couple hours ago. Is there any life at all if I'm in New Orleans and I'm a Houdat and I just love my team? There was a chance in the third quarter where they ran the trick play, the little Philadelphia special. It ends up getting picked off in a pick 6 down at the goal line. What's going on in New Orleans? Do they have any life at all? Is there any spark? I just don't know how Spencer Rattler is going to lead this team. I just don't.
Taysom Hill comes back this week. That's hey, that's a bonus for them. But unfortunately, they're not playing the Falcons, so I don't know how productive he's going to be. So,
if you were playing against the Falcons, I'm going to over under. He's over on 250 plus
anytime
yards.
Touchdown score, take him in fantasy, everything you got. Jeez.
Unbelievable.
But, they were in that game up until that miscue at the goal line, right? You run the Philly special, Olave throws the interception, and they were. Listen, I think Buffalo is still the better team, and I think they kind of came out. They're going through the motions. They didn't throw the ball a lot. We're going to establish the run, which Buffalo has been consistent with that all year. You got to give them a lot of credit, but New Orleans was close until it wasn't, right? And the 2 quarters you really want to win more so than any other are probably the third and the fourth, and I think that's just kind of where the game got away from them. Buffalo did what they're going to do. James Cook's very sneakily one of the best running backs in the league. That offensive line is great. Where Josh Allen only has to throw the ball 22 times, you can get a double-digit win. That's a massive, that's massive for Buffalo. And I mean, the Bills are who we thought they were, right? There's just that's where they're at. They're a team that's probably going to host maybe all the way until the Super Bowl, and right now they're just trying to stay healthy and they're trying to make sure they can beat everybody on paper, each and every week.
Statistically, Joey, New Orleans rushes for 189 yards, and they're trailing the whole game, so they really stuck to the run. I guess they're really not going to try to put too much pressure on Rattler. But guess what? Bills had 165 yards on the ground. They had 200 in the air, and they're the Bills. I think they're just kind of like in cruise control right now. They didn't have to do a whole heck of a lot to win. They still won by, 11 points anyways, 12. They're a good football team now, and especially at home.
Josh was really efficient in his performance Sunday. He didn't throw for a lot of yards. I think he was like 18 for 22 for 200. He just did what he needed to do. He ran effectively when he needed to run the ball. Again, James Cook had, over 100 yards. They kind of had their way with New Orleans defense. And again, offensively, the Saints are limited. Kamara played a pretty decent game.
Yeah.
Outside of that, Olave threw the interception, which I'm not sure why you would try that play down there at that time, but trying to throw the ball to Rattler. But it is what it is. The Saints really only have Olave as the only explosive player they have on offense. Kamara is a really good player. He's another Swiss Army knife. He can do a lot, catch at the backfield. He's a solid blocker, runs well. He's tough, but he's not the most explosive guy. Olave is really the only explosive guy they have. They have another guy that's pretty quick, but he's a smaller guy. So it's interesting. I'm not sure what New Orleans' plan is this year. I'm assuming they're going to try to draft a quarterback. So at some point in the year, you're going to play the rookie quarterback that you have and see if he's the answer. If not, then they're going to try it again after using the second round. What they use a second round quarterback on the kid from Louisville last year. So it'll be interesting. They have to improve on the offensive line. Obviously, that used to be one of their real strengths. I'm not sure it is now. Defensive line, they have some age on the defensive line. So they really are in the process of retooling that team.
Yeah, a lot of holes in New Orleans. You just think right now they're in the money for Arch Manning and the history with the Mannings in the New Orleans area. That it couldn't be written any better. But we'll see. 0-4 Saints against the 4-0 Bills. Go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Let me ask this, Joey. At what point do you go to your second round pick? What time do you go to Tyler at any point? Because, if you're going to draft a quarterback anyways, maybe see what you got. Maybe see if you can move him in the offseason. What do you do? Do you stick with Rattler?
Yeah, that is a bye week the perfect time to do it, Joey?
Well, they're 0 for right now. So it depends on how many O's you want before you want to change the landscape. So that doesn't necessarily have to be the bye week. And Spencer hadn't played bad. He just hadn't the guys around Spencer hadn't elevated their play. Okay, so hopefully by changing the quarterback, because the quarterback obviously is the most important offensive piece that you have. If you change the quarterback in that situation, maybe it helps. Okay, do I personally believe so? Probably not, because I don't think the pieces around the quarterback are great.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting, and I think the kid you mentioned earlier, the fullback, their Swiss Army knife will be back. Fullback / backup quarterback
/ tight end / linebacker / kick returner. Yeah,
he'll be back. So that'll help from a personnel standpoint and a game planning standpoint. But I just don't know how much better New Orleans will be.
Well, Taysom Hill, don't forget he's also a punt blocker and a Falcon killer. He does both of those.
That's right.
Let's move on. 1-2 Browns travel. What's that? A short distance, probably a bus ride to the 2-1 Detroit Lions. 34-10 is the final there. I think this is another one of those cruise control games, just like what we talked about there with Buffalo, Joey, where the Lions played well enough to really dominate. Gosh, they're scoring in bunches. It was 7-7 at the end of the first quarter, 13 unanswered points in the second, and then 14 in the fourth quarter. 34-10 is the final. Is that because the defense is playing so much better and they're not nearly as injured and banged up as they were last year?
I think so. They made Cleveland's offense look pedestrian. Now, Cleveland's offense is pedestrian, so to make him look that way, he's not saying a whole lot. Flacco is really, if we're being honest, he's really a backup. So it's like when Flacco jogs out on the field with the first unit, you would typically say the starter must be hurt. Okay, when Flacco comes out. But offensively, they just aren't an explosive team at all whatsoever. They ran the ball decently, but that's it. I mean, Flacco made a couple plays. He threw for a decent amount of yards, but they really aren't a good offense. And defensively, I think Cleveland's defense has been on the field so much this year. I mean, I don't think they had a sack. Detroit had 2 or 3, 4 sacks during the game. They pressured Flacco, and Goff really wasn't under a tremendous amount of pressure throughout the game.
He was not sacked, and 3 sacks there for Joe Flacco. Brian, if I'm the Cleveland Brown dog pound biscuit throwing end zone guy, am I okay that at least the Baltimore Ravens are equal with me right now? Do I feel good about that?
Listen, I'm playing that Packers game from a week before on repeat, right? That's what I'm going to be doing, right? Until we win again. Hey, we beat the Green Bay Packers. That's all I need, right? But I give a lot of credit to the Lions because they ran a lot of quick hitters. They ran the ball at when they needed to, but away from Myles Garrett. They kind of eliminated him from, hey, listen, there's one guy on this team that can wreck our game, so let's go away from that guy, right? And it seems simple, but, if you watch I just mentioned the Packers game. If you watch it the week before, I mean, he was giving Jordan Love fits. He was getting in the backfield consistently, maybe not a sack, but they had him mic'd up, and he runs. The left tackle goes left a little too far, and he cuts inside, and you hear the left tackle say, "Jordan, look out!" And then Myles goes on the sideline. He's over there laughing about it. He said, "Hey, I think that's maybe the funniest play I've been a part of." But it's fun when you're winning. I don't think he's having as much fun and doing as much laughing, obviously, this past Sunday. But again, for me, I'd ask Joey. I said, at what point, if you're the Browns, because listen, I don't need to talk about the Lions. They ran the ball well. They were efficient. Amon-Ra did what he did. Goff was efficient. Jahmyr Gibbs, other than Bijan Robinson, probably the best back in football right now. But if you're the Browns, at what point do you say, hey, we got 2 young quarterbacks over here, maybe, like I said, maybe the bye week or maybe at a certain point, see what we got?
If the bye week is soon, if not, then you make the change. Those guys have practiced. They're getting a salary. They're getting paid. So you put them in. You see what you have. You see if you need to draft a real quarterback this year. You see if Shador can do it, or you see if the other kid can do it. But you have to find out from a offensive standpoint what you have, because you have really you have not had a real explosive play if you're the Browns all year.
Yeah, it's been a
you don't scare you really don't scare anybody. Your offense does not scare anybody.
Yeah.
It's not one player on Cleveland's offense that you have to game plan for.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the ability, because your quarterback doesn't have the arm strength to go over 20 yards, and just stretch the defense out a little bit, that becomes very predictable. Mm-hmm. Anyways, all right, the Browns fall to 1-3. They are tied with the Baltimore Ravens at 1-3. Cincinnati falls to they're falling right now. They're the game's not over yet, but they're 2-1. All right, let's look at the next one here. This is an interesting game to me because I want to talk about the Patriots at 2-2. One of the reasons I want to talk, they've scored 102 points. They've only given up 81. Their point differential at 2-2 is plus 21. I'm kind of impressed with that. I think the guys are playing hard. I think they're doing everything that they need to make Vrabel happy and play that style. It's not a Belichick style. It's a little bit different. And Mike's a different dude. Although he learned everything from Bill, I get it. But at 2-2 right now, they completely dominated Carolina and made them look like redheaded stepchildren. It wasn't as close as the score was. So, Joey, we'll start with you. What do you agree with me on, if anything, regarding the Patriots? And, they may not be a playoff team, but they're going to fight you every step of the way.
They are going to fight you. They've taken the personality of their head coach, which is a good thing. He's fiery, he's tough. And I think the Patriots are that way. Now, that being said, special teams, again, have played a real key for a lot of games early this season. And when you block a punt, and you return a punt for a touchdown, and then you return another punt for 60 yards, then that really took some of the air out of what Carolina could do. But the Patriots are a good team. The quarterback was again efficient. They ran the ball fairly well by committee. Defensively, they're a sound football team. If they can just find a way to create scoring and, again, play all three phases, offense, defense, and special teams effectively, then they'll have a pretty good – they'll finish second in the AFC East.
In the division, yeah. Brian, it was 7-6 at the end of the first quarter. It was 28-6 at half, and then it was 35-6 at the end of the third quarter. Let's give credit where it's due. Patriots defense came and they brought it also. Panthers were struggling, a late score, 42-13 is the final. But what impressed you with what New England's been able to do?
Well, Drake May was about as efficient as you could be. He was 14-17. I think he was just over 200 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, no turnovers, almost a perfect quarterback rating. Can't ask for much more than that, right? If you're in a situation where you're going into the film room and you're watching and breaking down and say, hey, guys, we're better than these people, right? On the other end, we're better than Carolina. We should beat them. Should be kind of soundly, right? Obviously, I don't think you're going to go out and plan to score 42 points, but that's about as efficient as you can be. That's something you'd see Josh Allen do against the Saints, right? Very similar type numbers. And by default right now, the way the Jets are playing and the Dolphins, especially with the Tyreek Hill injury tonight, they're the second best team in the division. And the AFC, there's a lot of question marks with the Ravens and the Bengals. Joe Burrow's not going to be back until it's probably too late. So this is a team that could definitely sneak into the playoffs if they continue to play really well. I don't think at any point they'll be nipping at the Bills' heels for the top spot in the division. I think that's kind of the hierarchy is they're number 2 right now and they're figuring it out. But the tape looks good. They ran the ball. The running backs didn't fumble this week, which was huge. I mean, that was a massive thing. Like every single guy they seemed to put back there was fumbling. I think you got to give the Steelers some credit for that. But and on the flip side, if you're Carolina, I just don't know. It's at a certain point you kind of just got to, McMillan looks decent. There are times when Bryce Young looks okay. They didn't run the ball terribly. I think they had 130 yards as a team, just about. But you got to score points. You got to find the end zone, right? Even against Atlanta, they weren't necessarily efficient at that. It's just the defense was absolutely stifled them. And then you have the pick 6 and it puts the game away. But, Patriots look pretty good. They're a team. Watch out. Dark horse playoff team. And then if you're Carolina right now, I don't know if you're looking at a quarterback in the draft. I don't know if you can. I think you still got to trust Bryce Young. But, it is what it is at this point.
Yeah, it was a struggle. That's what it was. Yeah. So they go to 1-3, and the Patriots, as we mentioned, they're 2-2. You mentioned some uncertainty, Brian, with the AFC, the Chargers. And Joey, let me start with you. Being a West Coast team for a lot of the years that you were with Oakland, of course, and with the Raider organization, and then your time with the Jets, I think it's a lot easier to go west if you're an East Coast team than it is to come from the West and go to the East. The Chargers weren't able to score. They get 18 points between the second and the third quarter. It's kind of like they woke up, but then they fell apart. They couldn't score when they needed to. It's a 3-point game. They had multiple possessions in the fourth quarter. They just weren't able to get a first down. And how about the crowd and how happy they were that Jackson Dart, and it was a full crowd too. Here's a team that hadn't won a ball game, and the place looks like it's just about packed. So kudos to the Giant fans for showing out the way that they did. And what an exciting game for them to be able to say, this new kid, this rookie that we brought in, we get our first win of the year.
Well, I think they were super excited to see Jackson Dart. They have been clamoring for Jackson Dart for a couple of weeks now. Even when Russell threw for 450 in Dallas, they were clamoring for Dart soon after that. And the week prior, they were clamoring for Jackson Dart. And to be quite honest with you, he played a really efficient game. The numbers don't tell the whole story. There were plays where he actually looks similar to what Josh Allen is. I mean, he was effective throwing the ball when he needed to be. He was great with his legs outside the pocket. He was really poised to be starting his first game. But the friend of a rookie quarterback is a great defense, and that defense pressured Herbert all day long.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. Herbert lost Alt, the left tackle. Now, the Chargers ran the ball really well. That rookie running back, he ran the ball really well. So the Chargers are still a really good team, but when you have a defensive line like the Giants have, and they were able to step up and rely on that this past week, they're going to be tough to beat. They will be a hard out, because if the quarterback stays efficient, He doesn't make mistakes. He plays within himself. Now, the downside of that is they lost their best receiver for the year.
Yeah.
That's the downside of what the Giants are trying to do. And that's unfortunate for a young quarterback to lose his best receiver. So it'll be interesting to see where the Giants kind of go from here. But Jackson Dart, it looks like, was the right decision to make a quarterback at this time.
Brian, I'm going to go old school with you, and I hate sport turf. I hate AstroTurf. I used to love grass. The smell, the dirty uniform. Jackson Dart's uniform yesterday should have had grass stains all over it, a little bit of blood and sweat and tears and all that. He played hard. That was a tough first game to win. His uniform, even though there wasn't anything, it was dirty. Scatabo had a dirty uniform. You know, these two rookies, they had to work to get that. That was a tough win for him, but congratulations to the young man. He played well enough, but he got hit. I bet you he woke up a little sore this morning.
Give some credit to the Giants' offensive line, because the Chargers have a pretty good front seven, and they've kind of asserted dominance at least the first couple weeks, where they stifled. The Broncos weren't able to do much in the run game. Ashton Genty, who had a phenomenal game this week, couldn't do anything against this front seven. Going back to week 2, the Chiefs couldn't run the ball. And the Giants made it a point of emphasis. They said, listen, we got a rookie quarterback, game 1. We're at home. We got a lot of energy. We're going to run the ball, control the line of scrimmage. And then they got after Justin Herbert. The Joe Alt injury aside, Herbert was running for his life all day. He took a lot of hits. Harbaugh made a point of saying, hey, we got to keep our quarterback clean, because if not, it's going to be a long year for us. But like Joey mentioned, Omarion Hampton looked really good for the Chargers. He had a very nice explosive run, really the only explosive play they had the whole day, right? Quentin Johnson still looked consistent. I'm looking for Ladd McConkey anywhere, right? He hasn't been involved in this offense barely at all. But give credit to Brian Daboll, right? They went out and there was a game against Dallas they should have won, and they had 500 yards of offense. They looked unstoppable, and then to come back a couple weeks later and say, we're going to change our identity a little bit. Tyrone Tracy Jr. being a little banged up may have had something to do with that, right? He's more of their first through third down back receiving guy. And they played hard-nosed smash-mouth football. I think they only threw for 111 yards, but they were well over 100. I think it was 130 rushing again. And it's a win. You win against a very good team. You get the 0 out of the win column, which always feels good. And going forward, I think they got a lot to build off of. I know we were kind of talking about it the last couple of shows, say, hey, at what point do they go to Jackson Dart? Do you think it's too early and maybe let him sit? But, it looked good. It's unfortunate Malik Neighbors is out now, because young quarterback, it's important to build a rapport, especially with, your star wide receiver, to be able to get on the same page and see where you're going and figure out the timing and everything. But, escape with a win is always good.
Brian, I'm going to ask a question. What hurts more? Getting hit by Khalil Mack in the front 7 of the Chargers, or Jackson Dart getting hit by his head coach, pumped in the chest about 25 times like Mike Tyson playing body blow there at the end of the game, because he was so happy that they won their first game? Do you know which one hurts more?
I guess it depends on how much adrenaline you got pumping.
Yeah.
I think it maybe is a little more adrenaline after the game, right? Daboll was so red in the face because he was amped. It looked like you got a couple of Red Bulls, at halftime, and it was just. Yeah. It's good to see, right? There's been a lot of bad football in New Jersey with the Giants over the last handful of years, right? And then
the Jets. Don't forget the Jets.
Listen, that's one problem at a time, right? We already talked about that.
They play in the same stadium. There's been a lot of bad football there.
But to have to watch Daniel Jones and everyone saying, "Oh, hey, is he your MVP dark horse for 3 weeks?" and then to go out and lose 3 games, it's kind of nice to say, "All right, listen." We win at 1:00, and then to turn on the TV and see the Rams beat the Colts, you're saying, hey, it was a good week for New York Giants nation. I'll say that. Yeah,
it certainly was. Joey, any final thoughts before we move on? Which hurts more, getting hit by Khalil Mack or by your head coach after you win your first game?
Well, I drafted Khalil Mack, so I'm going to say by Khalil Mack.
Yeah, I'll agree with you, but, it was still pretty funny watching Jackson.
Brian Daboll has a lot on the line. I mean, Jackson Dart was his guy. From the beginning, he wanted Jackson Dart. He got Jackson Dart. It was just a matter of time before they were going to play him. And guess what? Jackson Dart came away with a victory in his first start. So Brian has a lot to be excited about, happy about, because again, his job's on the line now. Whether this can save his job at the end of the day is yet to be seen. but it's a good start for Jackson Dart.
Yeah, not perfect, but you know what? 21-18, I'll take it anytime. And we're no longer winless, or we're 1-3, and the Chargers, if you want to say they fall to 3-1, that's how that works. All right, 2 undefeated teams end up going in Tampa. Pretty good game. I think the Buccaneers found out in the first half that you better be ready at all times. They ended up being 24-6 was the final at the end of the second quarter, not the final, but the score at the end of the second quarter. But a good football game. You block the extra point, you get a 2-point conversion. A lot of interesting things the way that it happens. Special teams again, but am I upset, Joey, if I'm Tampa, or is it we went against a really good team and we had a bad half and we'll get better? We'll be fine.
No, you're not upset if you're Tampa. I mean, obviously, you play to win the game, as Coach Edwards would say. You play to win the game.
That's right.
However, they played really well. They played well enough to win the game. And they came back. They were behind the whole game, but they came back. There was a key mistake by Baker Mayfield that kind of hurt at the wrong time. But the rookie receiver they have is the real deal. Okay, defensively, they played pretty well, especially the second half when they made the comeback. Love hurts sometimes. And that being said, he didn't complete a pass the whole second half. He was 0 for 8 the second half of the game.
Yeah.
So that's bad. But again, Philly shows you what a team look like. They play with a winner's mentality. They have a championship pedigree. And guess what? Again, we're saying this another week. All 3 phases of the game showed up for Philadelphia, which is why they won the game. They've taken their head coach's personality, everybody except maybe A.J. Brown. That's a whole nother story. But they've taken their coach's personality. They're a tough, gritty football team that finds ways to win, which is why they're still undefeated.
Brian, it was funny. I'm watching this game, and at one point I look and I go, I guess they're going to get as many defensive holding wide receivers and keeping guys from getting open because they can't throw a flag on every play. I mean, they're getting away with stuff, but they're still 4-0. It doesn't matter. 31-25 is the final. What impressed you in this game?
If you're Philadelphia, is your best unit your special teams unit? Because it's 2 weeks in a row where they've kind of really set the tempo, right? Get a block kick early and score a touchdown, and then the week before they blocked 2 kicks and took one of them back. That's the difference in both of these games. So give them a lot of credit. Because if I were to go back and look at these numbers and say, hey, Saquon Barkley averaged 2.3 yards per carry. Jalen Hurts only completed 15 passes for 130 yards. Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown had 4 catches combined. Didn't complete a pass in the second half. Offense looks stifled. Offensive line doesn't look nearly as good as it was, and you're 4-0, right? And you win a game against another undefeated Tampa Bay team, and really from the offset, they looked dominant. They beat up on them in the first half. Kudos to Baker Mayfield, though, man. Mike Evans is out. Chris Godwin kind of coming back in. Bucky Irving took a shot in that game. He was a little banged up, but as long as Baker's on the field, this team has a chance. And it's kind of crazy that the effort and the one mistake Joey said he makes, it's unfortunate because he's able to break a sack and he gets out. He's trying to do just a little too much, and it's unfortunate you throw an interception in the end zone. But I like this Tampa Bay team a lot. I think they're a playoff team, and I think they're going to be a tough out. I think they're kind of looking at that, stepping off the field and say, hey, we're going to see these guys again in January, hopefully, right? And maybe things will be a little bit different. But like Joey said, he's the real deal, man. He's got a ton of talent. He's got a ton of deep play possibility in that offense. And, you like to not be down 24-6 before, the offense kind of gets rolling and turns on. But, temperature on the field was 93 degrees at kickoff. It should have kind of helped Tampa Bay a little bit, right? Talk about home field advantage for them. But kudos to the Eagles. It's been sloppy. It hasn't necessarily been clean in any capacity, but they're 4-0, and, they're right where they want to be.
That quarterback, Baker is a top 10 quarterback. I mean, he's hovering around 8, 9, 10 as a quarterback. I mean, there aren't a lot of quarterbacks you would take above Baker right now. I think Baker's playing at a really high level. And again, he plays with that chip on his shoulder. He finds things during the week to be upset with the other team about, and he goes out and play. And the guys, they follow him. He's got this innate leadership ability that guys love to follow. Everywhere he's been, guys have gravitated to Baker, and he's been a leader everywhere he's gone.
He had a play, I think it was in the third quarter. He drops back to pass. The pocket collapses. Somebody in front of him, at least one player grabs him. He doesn't go down. He escapes, runs out to his right, fakes out a linebacker, brings it out towards the middle of the field and gets hit as he's getting the first down. Couldn't have done any more, right? Nobody picks him up. Not a single one of his linemen go over to get him. He just gets up, drops the ball on the ground, lets the referee get it and goes back in the huddle and does his business. He's just one of those guys that he earns my respect a little bit more each and every week. I'm happy for him, except on game day when he's going against my team. But, they were 3-0. The Eagles were both 3-0. Someone had to lose this game, and unfortunately it was the Buccaneers, 31-25, that game of final in Tampa. Next game we want to look at, two teams. We've had two games where nobody had won a game going against each other. Tennessee ends up going to Houston to play the Texans. This one was just plain ugly, guys. Texans come out 26-0 is the final there. There's a lot of problems in Tennessee, but let's just focus on, is this something that is a shot in the arm that is desperately needed to get the Houston Texans back on the playoff hunt? Is this enough? Joey,
I don't know if this is enough to get Houston going. It was needed, right? Because both teams were needing a win. Houston has players. I don't think they're as tough and as stout as they were last year. They do have the ability to rush the passer. Defensively, they're still a pretty solid team. Offensively, they just aren't clicking right now. They ran the ball okay versus Tennessee. The quarterback, CJ, did some good things. He was pretty efficient in this game. But Tennessee is really a bad football team right now. And I'm going to quote the quarterback a little bit. And I know this is a family show, but like he said, they played like ass. They really did. They didn't play great at all. And the thing that bothers me right now about Tennessee and their offense is the quarterback is not getting better week for week. You don't see the improvement. And that is on the head coach. That is on the head coach and offense coordinator, that the quarterback is not progressing week to week. He looks the same in week 4 as he looked in week 1. And for a young quarterback, you like to see small steps. I mean, you look at Caleb Williams since the new coach has come in, and obviously he's a year older. However, each week you kind of see Caleb gets better and better with what Ben Johnson is doing, and I just don't see that with Ward. Now he's a rookie, and you have to go through those rookie mistakes. You hit a rookie wall at some point, and I love what Cam Ward can do with his arm and with his playmaking ability, but he's still making some mistakes and not being corrected. And let's be honest, there are really no playmakers on the outside. The offensive line is struggling at times. They're just a bad football team. Yeah.
Brian, they were both winless going into this. Texans end up going 1-3 now after this 26-0 victory. What about the Texans is good for you, or at least a little bit better now that they've got win number 1 on their belt?
Well, I found a spark at running back. Woody Marks had a really good week for them, both in the receiving game and on the ground. Titans are a tough watch right now, man. If you're a Titans fan, listen, there's a bunch of good players in the top 3 picks in the draft, right? And more than likely, you'll have the first overall pick. You could trade back, get another team their quarterback, and still get your guy, But other than that, I mean, Callahan and Nick Holtz, their offensive coordinator, kind of struggling right now. And Joey mentioned Caleb Williams and how he's improving and he's striding. A lot of the scripted stuff I see for Chicago, the first 15 out of the first drive, and then in the second half looks really, really clean. I think that's when the Bears are at their best. So that's a coordinator and a coach scheming for their guy, for their young quarterback, to give them the best possible chance to win the game. And I don't see that at all with Tennessee. Now, to be fair, they don't have a ton of talent. They're not running the ball really well. The defense is I think the best part of their team, but still not really existent. But it's ugly right now in Tennessee. Good for the Texans. This is a get-right game. Hopefully build some momentum, kind of see what you got as far as that running back room until Joe Mixon comes back, whenever that happens. But for now, you get the 1 in the win column, and, hopefully get C.J. Stroud back on track. You start moving him in the right direction again.
Yeah, they're 1-3. They got a long way to go, but at least it's a step in the right direction. Next game here, I'm going to start with you, Brian. I'm just going to say that Clayton Kershaw and Matthew Stafford played on the same Little League baseball team when they were kids. And on the day that Clayton Kershaw pitched his last regular season game up in Seattle, Matthew Stafford throws for 375 yards and 3 touchdowns. And the Rams look like they are going to make some noise. Undefeated 3-0 Colts go to Los Angeles at SoFi. They end up 3-1, 27-20 is the final there. Give me your thoughts here real quick on the Rams and the Colts.
Rams receiving core looks really good. Tutu Atwell had a really long touchdown. He's their explosive, sneaky guy. Puka Nacua, you can see why between him and Devontae Adams, the 1-2 punch, they were comfortable letting Cooper Kupp walk. Kyron Williams does what he needs to do. Stafford looks good. If they can keep him clean in the pocket, which is, hey, listen, the Colts have a pretty solid defense. But, man, there was a play in this game where A.D. Mitchell had a long touchdown, and he dropped it into the end zone. That was really rough. And then you come back a couple possessions later, and Jonathan Taylor has a really long touchdown run, and then the same A.D. Mitchell again with the hold. He's got to be the sickest dude in Indianapolis right now. You feel bad for him. But the Colts played well enough to where they could have won this game. A couple of miscues, obviously, listed those, that I just mentioned, but they still ran the ball decently well. Taylor, not his typical self, he's kept out of the end zone, but I'm a big fan of Tyler Warren, rookie tight end at Penn State. I think he's a tremendously talented guy. They feel comfortable putting him in the backfield. They use him everywhere. Honestly, I think they've done everything but have him throw passes. But Daniel Jones didn't look, as good. He kind of came down to earth a little bit, but this Rams team is for real. I think right now they're by and away the best team in the division. I think we're going to find out on Thursday for sure when they play San Francisco, but not a lot of holes in this team. They got a lot of depth at every position. They got a tremendously good defense. Matthew Stafford is healthy and he's upright, and they got Sean McVay calling plays. You can't really ask for much more. Yeah,
no kidding. Rams, after the loss to Philadelphia, really came out offensively. They looked sharp. It was 3-3 at the end of the first quarter, 13-10, but Stafford throwing it all over the place, Joey. He looks like he's 10 years younger than what he is.
Yeah, truth be told, the demise of Matthew Stafford has been over-exaggerated.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say that again about another quarterback here soon, but it was over-exaggerated. But truth be told, they could be 4-0 right now. And guess what? The Colts really played well enough to win this game.
Sure they did.
The Colts probably should have won this game. AD, he had a tough outing, to say the least. But the Colts played well enough to win this game. Daniel Jones played well enough. The 2 interceptions didn't hurt. Didn't help, obviously. But I think he is their quarterback. He'll finish the year unless something catastrophic happens. I think he'll be their guy, and he's played well enough to keep that job. Jonathan Taylor is an impactful player. He had the touchdown run called back because of the holding penalty, which was more like a tackle than a hold. But the Colts are a really good team. Make no mistake about it. Their defensive line is pretty good.
Yeah.
And their offensive line is really good. If they just get, middle of the road quarterback play, they will be a playoff team. And obviously the Rams, as I said a week ago, I think the Rams will win that division.
Well, for all the things that we said about the Colts, that loss puts them at a tie now with Jacksonville. We'll talk about that in just a second. Mm-hmm. But very interesting to see how the Colts are 3-1, the Rams are 3-1, and we'll see how this turns out. But the Rams end up with a victory there, 27-20, as we mentioned, is the final. Jacksonville at 3-1. Now, this is a surprise for me, especially on the road, especially against San Francisco in Levi Stadium. And I don't know what to make, but their defense is playing great. 26-21 is the final here. Both these teams now are 3-1, but is any surprise with you, Joey, with Jacksonville being 3-1 at this point?
Absolutely. Defense travels. And the thing that has kind of been overlooked is their defense is not bad at all. And I hadn't paid any attention to it until this week. But their linebacker play has been solid. They can rush the passer when they need to. The secondary is not bad. they're a pretty good football team as long as the offense doesn't put them in bad positions with interceptions and turnovers, but they can really run the ball on offense. Again, the running back had another big game. He had a great touchdown run that was beautiful. The quarterback didn't make too many mistakes. Jacksonville is a solid football team. And on the other side of that, the 49ers, again, like I said last week, I'm concerned with the 49ers because they're an older team. The quarterback has been in and out of the lineup, and he may be out this upcoming week for the next game. So I think they have some problems. They don't have any real explosion on the outside. McCaffrey is their Swiss Army knife. He catches the ball. He runs inside. He runs outside. And we'll see how long that happens. But they play a really good and a really physical brand of football. But it'll be interesting to see if they can continue to do that all year long. But Jacksonville is the biggest surprise because defensively, they're a really good team.
Yeah, Travis Etienne, Brian, has 124 yards. He's averaging 6.1. He had a touchdown on the ground. Trevor Lawrence with 174 yards. Yeah, that's not a big day, but, clean pocket, wasn't sacked, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Brock Purdy throws for 309, but he has 2 picks, and he was sacked, once? Only once. I thought it was 3 times, excuse me. Tell me your reflection here on the game. I'm as surprised as Joey is. I didn't expect Jacksonville to be 3-1 at this point, especially getting a nice little road win as they did here in San Francisco.
Purdy looked a little sloppy. He looked like a guy that hasn't really practiced in 2 weeks, which is, exactly what happened. I think he's still a little banged up. They get 3 total turnovers as well. I think he fumbled on that 1 sack. But, run game hasn't really been as good as needed to be for the 49ers so far this season. McCaffrey hasn't really been able to get it going. Jaguars' brand of football is this. We're going to run the ball. We're going to control the line of scrimmage. We're going to control the clock. We're going to be efficient in the red zone, and we're going to get after your guys, right? We're going to force turnovers. They're very opportunistic. They've done a phenomenal job. I think, ironically, their worst defensive outing of the year so far was against the Bengals. But, the way it sits right now, Jacksonville's tied for first place in that division. They can make some noise. I might be a little too early to think playoffs, but I don't think we've seen the best of Trevor Lawrence or this offense as of yet. Brian Thomas Jr. still kind of seems a little lost, with the new scheme, new play callers. If he gets it figured out and they can start hitting some of those deep passes and open up the run game even more, the sky's the limit for this team, man. I think they've got a ton of talent. Flip side, if you're San Francisco, you're still right there in the division. You can kind of come out. I know it'll probably be maybe an upset depending on who's the starter, if it's Purdy or Mac Jones. Mac Jones looks solid, right? But you got a chance to make a statement with another division win, flip it, and kind of put all the critics and the doubters a little bit because it looked kind of bad this week. Kind of put them to bed and still kind of take a stranglehold on the NFC West.
Well, NFC West has the 49ers, the LA Rams, and the Seattle Seahawks all at 3-1, and trailing only by a game is the Arizona Cardinals at 2-2. So very tight division here early. All right, I think I know who you were talking about when you said there was another quarterback, Joey, that was listed as being 6 feet under. Am I right in saying that Patrick Mahomes is back?
Without question, the demise of Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs has been greatly exaggerated, and they showed that against the Ravens. They came out. They had Worthy back. They were able to do a lot of different things offensively, which opened up the run game, which they ran the ball decently. Not great, but they ran it decently. But Patrick Mahomes did what he does, whatever it takes. He scrambles outside the pocket. When he's got a clean pocket and he's not getting sacked, he's finding open guys. He's able to throw the ball down the middle of the field to guys. Seam, he's able to throw the ball outside. And again, with Worthy, they're able to do a lot of things. I mean, he was their leading rusher, I think, in the game, along with their leading receiver. So he was able to do a lot of things. Again, and the offense will continue to open up when they get the other kid back after week 6. So I think, all Kansas City needs to do is keep playing their brand of football. Andy Reid, he's done this a long time. He knows what he's doing, what it takes. And they're a really good football team. Defensively, they play well. That quarterback can be a handful, and they had him running for his life most of the day, and then he got hurt. So that'll be interesting to see where the Ravens end up probably playing a backup quarterback this upcoming week. But we're going to give all the credit to Kansas City right now because they were left for dead. They finished what they had won one game, and everybody was talking about, is it over? Is the dynasty over? Not so fast.
Thank you, Lee Corso. Not so fast, my friend. Brian, if I'm the NFL scheduler, was I just looking at John Harbaugh and going, all right, I'm going to give you the Bills, the Lions, and the Chiefs all in the first 4 weeks. You're going to get the Browns. You're going to beat them, but good luck with the others. That's a tough thing. They got the Texans. They got the Rams in 2 weeks, the Bears, the Dolphins, the Vikings, and then the Browns again. They got a chance to turn things around, don't they?
We talk about how good Patrick Mahomes looked. I think Lamar Jackson is kind of in the same tier, the upper echelon of quarterbacks, right? I think he's right there behind him. I think the only difference is the lack of playoff success. I think that's the only thing we can kind of throw out there to separate and the distinguishing factor between the two. But this Ravens defense looks bad. Like they haven't stopped anybody, right? I mean, they stopped Joe Flacco, but to be fair, I think everybody so far this season has stopped Joe Flacco. But it's Xavier Worthy. They were running gadget plays and they couldn't seem to stop him. Travis Kelce wasn't necessarily a vertical threat, but he was efficient on third down. And when you needed 5 or 6 yards, he was there. I will say this Chiefs offense looked dead in the water for a couple weeks. And I think that's kind of why everyone was kind of writing off Patrick Mahomes and saying, hey guys, they've lost 2 games. Is the dynasty dead? Right. I think that's where we were at. But I think Andy Reid coached a phenomenal game. I think a lot of people have kind of, overlooked how I think Kansas City, Spagnuolo, and Reid called a much better game than Harbaugh did, right? I think that's a huge factor in this. But Lamar was running for his life. Derrick Henry looked like the best running back in the world again the first 2 weeks, and he's kind of taken a step back,
Eight carries. That's crazy, right?
Justice Hill, if you take away, I think he had a 71-yard run. They already down 20-something points at the very end of it. But if you take that out of there, I mean, they only ran the ball for, it was not typical Raven fashion. They still had about 115 yards, but still, I mean, it was just, they couldn't do much of anything that they typically do on offense, right? And when the defense isn't stopping anybody, it's apparent, and we saw it. And the Chiefs scored 37 points. They were effective at will. They did whatever they wanted. And if you're the Ravens now, it's go time, right? Lamar may not be playing this week, and you're 1-3. You got to turn it around right now, otherwise, you're. I don't know this. The numbers for teams that start 1-3 or 1-4, 1-5 when it comes to making the playoffs, but I can promise you they're not very good.
Not very good at all, right, Joey? So tell me very briefly, guys, is the Chiefs win more of it? The Chiefs are back, or are the Ravens more worried that we could be out of this thing before we even get to the halfway point?
Well, I don't think the Ravens are out of it, but their defense is really problematic. Their defense is a real problem. If Lamar when he comes back healthy, they'll be able to score enough points versus most teams to win games. So I'm not super concerned from that standpoint about Baltimore, but I am concerned about their defense. Their defense is putrid at this point. It's really bad. I mean, right. You can run on them, you can throw on them, you can
spit on them,
whatever you want.
Kick them in the shins, and they're not going to fight you back. Ryan, your thoughts here, real quick.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, the Chiefs right now are 2-2, right? And if they can split 3-3 or 4-2, coming back to win, Rashee Rice, who really is, I think he's the superstar of this offense. When he comes back, I think it's going to open a lot more up, and I think this team's only going to get better from there. But a lot better than they were 7 days ago. I'll say that the Chiefs are a lot better off now than they were, because even against the Giants, the offense didn't look particularly good. But credit this defense. I know we talk about Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, that's the storyline. But Chris Jones, you got Bolton, you got Drew Tranquil. They're running around the field. They're making plays. Trent McDuffie did a phenomenal job. I think he was on Zay Flowers most of the day. Chiefs are still very good. They're still probably going to be there in January. And that division's improved a little bit, so it's going to be interesting to see who wins. But I'm still, after this week, I don't want to say I'm sold on the Chiefs, but I think it's safe to say they're back.
The Chiefs needed this win a lot more than the Ravens needed this win. So kudos to them, because this was a must-win game for the Chiefs.
Ravens' schedule gets a lot lighter down the stretch too. They could easily rip off 4 or 5 wins in a row.
Yeah, they can go 3-1 in their next 4. It's a possibility, if not even better. But, if they can turn things around. All right, last of the early games, if we want to call it that. There's 2 more to go total, folks, but the Bears go to Las Vegas and they steal one. That's the way I'm going to say it. You get 9 points in the fourth quarter versus the 3, 25-24, close game. It was within a score the whole doggone way and back and forth. You call it what you will, but Caleb Williams and the Bears are 2-2 right now. At 0-2 when they first started, for them to be at 2-2 right now, what a turnaround for Chicago. Joey, we'll start with you.
Caleb played well enough to help them win the game. It wasn't a perfect game by any stretch, but he made plays when he needed to make plays. They were able to their defense played well, to be quite honest with you. I mean, they caused turnovers and, Geno, I'm not going to say that we turned the page on Geno, but he struggled for the second week in a row. Yeah. And again, if your quarterback is struggling and he's throwing interceptions, he's turning the ball over, it's hard to win football games when they do that. So Ashton Jenney played really well for them this week. He was able to get more carries. Chip finally realized that he needed to give him the ball a little more, I think, and he was able to do that. But the Raiders offensively, they don't really scare you. I mean, they have a great tight end who scares you. You have to game plan for the tight end, but none of the receivers you have to game plan for with Oakland. And you just force Geno to throw the ball in the middle of the field, and guess what? He'll give it back to you on occasion, and I think that's what happened this game.
Yeah, Brian, you mentioned Bowers as the tight end. That he's going to be your go-to guy. It's unfortunate you don't have an outside guy like Cliff Branch or someone like that from back in the day, or Willie Gault. But Ashton Jenney, 21 carries, 138 yards. Nice little breakout game for him. But they only get 24 points. They lose by 1.
I think the bright spot here for the Raiders is he showed why he was drafted as high as he was. He was efficient as heck. I think he receiving touchdown as well. So he was phenomenal in all phases for them. The offensive line was finally generating some space, right? Give him some room to run. I mean, he's Mr. get tackled or contact behind the line of scrimmage for the early part of the season so far. But I think if you're the Raiders, I think you got to do some more quick hitters to Bowers, get him in space, right? There wasn't a lot of that. He's not getting the football a ton. Jacoby Myers is decent on the outside. Same thing with him, though. They're putting the Raiders in obvious passing situations because they're able to stop the run. They're able to get pressure. And, Geno's making mistakes. That happens, right? When you get pressure on a quarterback, a lot of times you're going to, they're going to crack a little bit. They're going to make some mistakes. But, man, if you're the Raiders, I think this was a game, especially at home, that you had circled as, hey, we can get this one, right? This is one that we can definitely win. Yep. Kudos to the Bears because no one's really talking about them in the NFC North. They come out here. They play a really good game of football. They didn't run the ball that well, but they play defense, special teams. Joey mentioned earlier all 3 phases with the Eagles, right? And Bears kind of did the same thing. And it wasn't pretty. They weren't really efficient in the red zone. A lot of field goals, but it ends up being a win nonetheless, and they get to escape 2-2.
And I expect the Bears to be better week 8 than they were week 2. You know absolutely. What I mean? Because the quarterback's getting better. Rome Odunze is playing well. He scored. I think they have the tools. Again, the head coach, who's an offensive guy, who's they're game planning to do the things the quarterback can do well and get the ball to the playmakers that they have. So I think the Bears are trending upwards, where I'm not sure the Raiders are trending upward.
I'll say this about the Bears offensively. Luther Burden really hasn't done much of anything yet. Colson Loveland really hasn't been involved. DJ Moore has been almost non-existent in this offense through the first month. I think maybe I'll ask you, do you think more so like they're learning the offense as well as Caleb to where, hey, they got to kind of, figure it out and get the timing right? Because if they start getting those guys involved again, I think this offense can be a lot better than it is right now.
Yeah, I think so. Luther played really well last week. He made some plays for them last week. They have to get the other receiver involved a lot more. Rome is getting a lot of targets, but they just have to, again, the continuity of a new offense, new terminology, and they're all young. So it's a young football team that they're growing together.
Joey, I'm going to give you a real quick analysis. When I first moved to Atlanta and played with the Falcons, there'd be times where I'd stay up till maybe 10:30 or so, and even though I know I'd practice, I'd watch the Braves. and they were the worst team in the National League West the previous year. But then I'd see it was 3-2. They were trailing in the 7th inning. I'd shut the TV off. Next day, I find out they win 5-4, and then they'd be trailing 2-1 in a game, and then I'd turn it on the next day to see what happened, and they'd win 6-5, something like that. You need to learn how to win the close ones. You know how to lose the close ones. Is this one of those games where the Bears are learning to win, where they had given up and lost by a point or two or a field goal, and now they're starting to learn to win and be a little bit more competitive so that they can get themselves where they need to be in their division?
I think so, because really and truly, the Raiders probably should have won this game. Okay,
right.
But Chicago found a way to make plays at the end of the game. And you saw how the excitement they had and the enthusiasm they had after the game in the locker room. This meant something. And again, you have to learn how to win football games. Winning in the NFL is hard. You have to learn how to win. Everybody can lose, but you got to learn how to win. See what it takes, the grit it takes to make plays when your best is needed. And I think Chicago was able to do that this week.
Yeah, good win for the Bears. They're 2-2. Raiders fall to 1-3 again. 25-24 is the final there from Las Vegas. All right, last game, primetime game. Brian, you and I watched this a little while, and I'm probably going to say early in the third quarter. You saw it before I did. This is a good game, right? This is an entertaining. This is a primetime game. It ends up 40-40 as a tie. Joey, did you feel the same way when you started watching this game? It was 13-0. Then they block an extra point. They run it back for 2-point conversion. Next thing they know, they go 16 unanswered points. And what a seesaw battle. And again, now we got to watch win-loss ties, because this is the first tie of the season. We got to have that to deal with for the rest of the year, and that extra scoreboard that it takes up, the space that it does. But nonetheless, pretty good football game.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good game. There are a couple of takeaways that I had from this game. I know a lot of people really like Jordan Love, and I like Jordan Love a lot. But he's on a roller coaster from time to time. And I know he threw for a lot of yards, but he also, especially at the end of the game, almost blew the game. You have to, your football acumen has to outweigh your natural skill and ability. And sometimes that bothers me, the things that he does that are actually costly. That being said, I'm concerned that Green Bay's defense is not as good or as a team as we thought they were. After 2 games this season, we thought that, guess what? They might be not only the best team in the NFC, but they're
Super Bowl bound, aren't they, Joey? They were absolute. It was an automatic. They were going to the Super Bowl.
Not so fast, my friend. I go back to that because that's after 2 more games, they have a lot of concerns, I think, defensively and offensively. Now, they were able to run the ball a little bit going down the stretch, but Dallas's defense, everybody that's played Dallas has gone through those guys like a hot knife through butter.
Yeah.
Green Bay didn't necessarily do that until toward the end of the game.
Yeah.
So to finish with a tie, while it felt good for Dallas, it almost had to feel like a loss for Green Bay.
Yeah, that's an interesting scenario. Brian, what was the over and under on how many times that we were going to have to look at Jerry and Stephen Jones in the box up there? I thought 40 would be the number. It was closer to 97 times. I think every other play we had to look at their reaction with their hands up in the air, or looking at each other where they're upset. Can we? I'd rather stop it, guys.
I think NBC is contractually obligated to at least a dozen times. I think so. But this was Cowboys kind of looked dead in the water. Packers went down the field. They went down the field again. It was about to be 14-0, and they block an extra point and they take it back. And that kind of flipped the momentum on its head a little bit, because then the Cowboys were like, oh, hey, we might maybe time to wake up a little bit. But shout out the Cowboys offense, because no CD Lamb, right? They looked abysmal last week against the Bears, who are not nearly as good defensively, at least from what we've thought through the first.
How big is George Pickens in that game too, right?
I think Pickens is an interesting character, man, because, some games he's that guy. He looks like he'd be a CD Lamb replacement. The next one he'll have 2 catches for 12 yards. But it's just, he was fantastic. They ran the ball pretty well. Dak looked very, very good. And unlike everyone else, they were able to kind of keep that defensive front and that Micah Parsons guy in check, right? It's almost like all those guys kind of knew his tendencies, right, and what he was going to try to do to them on that side of the ball. But great game plan. I not a lot of holes. This is a great game. It looked like it was going to be a dud. It looked like, hey, it's going to be an early night, right? Turn it off, get some sleep and wake up for Monday morning. But ends up going the as long as you possibly can, right? The whole way. They even went the entire overtime period, where, like Joey mentioned, that throw by Jordan Love in the end zone, they were kind of going a little too slow for my liking, with 13, 12, then 10, then 8. And I was like, hey, you got to snap the ball, and then to throw the ball, take a shot in the end zone, not just throw it away. I'm going to be honest. I would be surprised if half the guys in the league understand what the tie rules are and how it works at the end of the game, right? I'm sure half the guys on the Packers sideline were thinking, wait a second, do we not get another quarter here? Do we not get to keep playing? But it's one of those things where it's a great game. Jordan Love had a tremendous game. Romeo Doubs looked fantastic. Tucker Kraft, I think, is one of the best tight ends in football. But give Dak Prescott a lot of credit, man, because coming into this game, I don't think anybody thought the Cowboys score anywhere near 40 points or even hang around at all. Because I'll admit, I was one of the teams that after they beat up on the Lions and they go up and they go 2-0, I was like, hey man, this looks like a Super Bowl contender, and I was already ready to put them in the game.
Well, the tie rule, just to go back for a second, the tie rule, which came in effect a couple years ago, is a player safety rule. So once they changed and went to 10 minutes, after that it's a tie. They claimed that the longer the game went, there were more opportunity for injury. So that became a player safety issue. So that's why after 10 minutes, instead of going the whole 15 minutes, 10 minutes, the game's over. If nobody wins and both teams get an opportunity to get the ball, if nobody is leading, it's a tie game. So that became a player safety issue.
Joey, come on. The reason behind that more than I do is because they didn't want to have 4.5-hour games because it would screw up the scheduling for the network. A 4-hour, we'll give you an hour extra. We can build that into our clock. But there's a lot of that, in my opinion. And I know more than I am, so I'm teasing with you.
Without question. Guess what? NBC, the networks who pay all the money to the NFL, has something to do with that. They have a window that slotted times that they put this in. Now, NFL football, we have 3 hours for you here, 3 hours and 20 minutes. If you go above 3 hours and 30 minutes, then we got a problem.
We got a problem, Houston, and I agree with that. And then also it's like, hey, I'm not going to delay my evening news in each of my local markets. They're going to scream at us for the Heidi game and all that other stuff. But player safety, thank you. I appreciate you saying that, but we know that there's a money factor that's a lot bigger than all of it. All right, the Cowboys are 1-2-1. Packers are 2-1-1. And that's pretty much it, guys. I do want to make mention that while we first went on the air, the Broncos, they're at Empower Field at Mile High Stadium, end up winning 28-3. So they are 2-2, and the Bengals fall to 2-2. So very interesting week. Give me some final thoughts, Joey. What impressed you, or what still needs to happen here for you to be impressed after 4 weeks in the NFL schedule?
Well, I think just starting with the league as a whole, if you're a fan of the NFL, then you've had a lot of excitement early in the year. It's been a lot of great games. But again, the teams that have played special teams really well have usually come out on top. You have to play all 3 phases of the game, but the teams that have, like Philly and like other teams that have played really well on special teams, they usually win the game. Okay, and again, I go back to, if you can win in the trenches, that's where the game is won. The quarterback play is great, the receiver play is great, but if you can win in the trenches, if you can run the football, you usually have a great chance of winning the game, because your quarterback only has to be an efficient player. He doesn't have to play great if you can run the football.
Well, if you keep him clean like Dak Prescott was, he had 1 sack. If I remember correctly, it was credited as a sack, but we made a break for the line of scrimmage and he got back to it, but it was just a little bit behind. Maybe he lost a half a yard, but that really wasn't a sack. He was not pressured in the pocket at all. And and he's able to do everything that he needs to as an elite quarterback in the National Football League. Final thoughts for you, Brian?
10 one-score games this week. A lot of close games, a lot of competitive games, a lot of down-to-the-wire games, which is always fun as a fan, right? I got Sunday tickets, so right, I got the quad box going up. I can watch all of it, so it's nice to be able to watch all the games down the stretch. But very competitive so far. I mean, you got some teams, obviously they're kind of bad, but very wide open still in both conferences for both playoff teams and division winners, with obviously the exception of a few.
Yeah, you got a 40-point tie. Patriots score 42 points. Falcons get 34 along with Detroit. I think we're going to start to see offenses clicking a little bit more efficiently, and the scores are going to go up. I'm not making a prediction that that's going to be, because defense is always they react to all that stuff, but pretty good first quarter of the season. So thank you guys for everything that you did, all the homework, and good show. Appreciate it very much. So we want to say thank you to everybody for sticking around and waiting for the week in review, so to speak, in the National Football League, week number 4. This has been Harper LeBel along with Brian LeBel and Joey Clinkscales telling you we appreciate you being along with us for the NFL Wrap-Up Show. This has been week number 4. So thank you very much. We hope you have a great rest of your day, and go your favorite team, whoever that is.